Hello and welcome to 304 of the Total Saints podcast, your home for all things Southampton Football Club. A huge thank you to our TSP patron community because we couldn't make this show each week without your support. On that note, a huge welcome to Mark Eggleston, who has joined our Bobby Stokes tier. Coming up this week on the podcast, we have a win to discuss. We beat Swansea 3-0 in the FA Cup yesterday to progress to the fourth round, where we will face Burnley at St Mary's. And the Premier League returns on Thursday as the Saints travel to Old Trafford to take on Manchester United. And it's a quick turnaround as we face Nottingham Forest, who are currently sat third place in the Premier League. And we're going to be joined by Matt Davis from the Forest Focus podcast to preview that one. My name is Martin Sanders, and I'm delighted to be in the hot seat this evening, filling in for my namesake, Martin Starke. Some of you will already know me as Football Martin, a TikToker, YouTuber who is obsessed with Southampton Football Club and has been for the last 38 years. Joining me this week on the podcast, Steve Grant, the owner of Saints Web, Glen to the Cour, the writer of the blog League One -10, and Alfie House, senior Southampton reporter at the Daily Echo. Let's get into the podcast. Let's look back on yesterday's victory against Swansea. That winning feeling, Glen, you can't buy it, can you?
Well, you can. you can if you spend enough money, but PSR regulations don't allow you to these days. But no, in all seriousness, yes, it was nice to go to a game, come away from a game, and not having had it ruin the entire day or weekend or whatever. It's a feeling we haven't had often this season. We've probably only picked up maybe 3 or 4 results all season that people are happy with. So yeah, it's nice to walk away having had a decent afternoon. And I think the primary takeaway from the game was the strength of the opposition, and which is obviously vastly inferior to what we've been playing in every game this season. And it kind of was a game that illustrated to me the sort of levels that there are even at the bottom of the Premier League compared to the Championship, and it is a massive problem for football going forward. The difference in standards between those two divisions, and we're seeing that this year in the Prem with the 3 teams that are down the bottom, and Swansea are mid-table in the Championship, and they're looking for a run, for the playoffs. And it's hard to imagine, given what we saw yesterday, but stranger things have happened in the in the Championship. So no, it was nice to win. It's nice to score a few goals, create a few chances. There was some decent performances, but everything's got to be caveated with the strength of the opposition that we were playing against. So yeah, nothing to complain about, which is nice. Well, a couple of little things, perhaps we'll get onto those later. But yeah, overall, it was an enjoyable day, and yeah, good times.
Steve, Swansea were poor, weren't they? Let's be honest. Glenn spoke about the gap between the two leagues. It's massive, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, bear in mind, we obviously more or less battered them home and away in the league last season, 5-0 at home and a 3-1 away from home that massively flattered them. Yeah, I guess there shouldn't be a huge amount of surprise that, especially where Swansea have still got they've still got the same style of play that they've been employing for years, really. It's kind of been their trademark, really, has been the sort of possession game. But I think they're in that sort of situation at the moment where, when you get similar to what we had earlier in the season, in that when you take that step up and you play against better teams that are better at doing that style of play, then you basically just get completely found out. And I mean, their keeper must have presented us the ball 5 times, I reckon, in the final third. I mean, I think only one of them was in a properly dangerous situation, which was ended up rescuing by the defender taking the yellow card. But yeah, they were desperately poor, and of course they made a handful of changes themselves from their strongest 11. So whereas we only made 2 changes, I think, from last week, They've made 4 or 5, I think, and just the gap in class was noticeable anyway. And with them putting half a reserve team out, it just made it even more. They had a real lack of kind of experience alongside Grimes in midfield. No Joe Allen until late on, and yeah, I think we were able to dominate quite comfortably. That said, we got ourselves into a lot of good positions in the first half without actually eventually sort of causing the keeper any particular danger up until the point that we did take the lead. So that's one thing that I think they'll be looking at in terms of, okay, we made a fast start, but actually we while we got into some good positions, either the final ball or the shot was lacking. So as Glenn said, still plenty to work on, but it was good to see that even a kind of overall lack of confidence because of results didn't stop us actually putting in a half decent performance, albeit against opposition who were very much kind of catered for us to help us on our way, really.
Alfie, Kamaldeen Sulemana, he's come back into the side under Ivan Juric. He seems to really like him. He's shown a lot of belief in him. He spoke yesterday that he wasn't in great shape when he arrived at the football club. He played well yesterday, but we've been waiting for him to turn up for a fair while now, haven't we? He was a club record signing, not done a great deal up until now, but it was a decent performance from him, I thought, in the first 45 yesterday.
Yeah, I think, to be fair to Ivan Juric, he's come in and been really honest about a lot of people, and I think to a lot of people as well. I think Kamaldeen Sulemana is one of those, because he said that one of the things he heard was about attitude issues to an extent as well a couple of weeks ago, and he's now said that he arrived, he wasn't fit. So he said, right, well, he didn't have a great attitude, he wasn't very fit, but yeah, he's picked him in his last couple
winning combination.
Exactly, he clearly backs him, but it makes you wonder, is he somebody who just, he's come in, he's seen that he's got a bit of pace, a bit of talent, and he's gone, I need to put an arm around him. I need to make sure he's aware of the reason why he hasn't been successful so far, but try and get him firing. And, Ivan has pointed out the fact that he's done things he's liked in previous Premier League games since he's arrived. And I didn't really see them. I couldn't really see what he was doing that he liked. But what you have to say is against Swansea, against that level of opposition, he was brilliant. And, from the first minute, he was particularly aggressive, sort of pressing really high, working hard, tracking back when needed. And he had the moments in attack, obviously scoring his first goal since May 2023, which, is such a long time. And setting up Tyler Diblin brilliantly as well, not only putting the ball in, but actually that entire phase of play was Kamaldeen linking up really well with Leslie Ugochukwu, who also had a really good game. So you've got to give him credit. Is it a false dawn? Is it the beginning of something like Ivan Juric wants? Who knows? But what he's done is he's definitely put himself in the team for Man United and probably Forest as well. And if he plays like that against better opposition, then there's no reason why he shouldn't be involved. But yeah, I'll put my hands up and say that, like Glenn and I'm sure Steve as well, when I saw that lineup, I did think, where are the goals coming from? Even against Swansea, you did think there's no recognised striker. Kamaldeen's never really done anything else, but yeah, he was really good. He was my man in the match. I know Tyler won the Saints vote on the app, but Kamaldeen for me was the man who won them that game in that first half, and I'm intrigued to see how he gets on in the next couple of games because he's earned a chance.
He needs to kick on now for me, doesn't he? Going forward, Premier League obviously returns later on this week. Glenn, Sulemana, could he be a player that potentially stays in the side going forward and goes on and starts to prove a few people wrong, do you think?
Maybe. It's a bit of a stretch to assume that based on 45 minutes against Swansea. I was thinking about something I said a couple of years ago. When we were in the second half of the season and we were obviously going to get relegated when Ruben Sellers was in charge, and I was looking at the squad of players and thinking, how many of these players are capable of playing 3 decent games in a row in the Premier League? And there weren't many, and there's even less this year. And so for me, Sulemana is one, if he wants to prove that he's a Premier League footballer, he has to take the form that he showed in the Swansea game and do it over the next 2 or 3 games to prove that he can be an asset at this level. You need to do more than just turn up against a Championship side in the FA Cup. So, but that was a hell of a lot better than what he's done so far, which is a very low bar. And And yeah, it's interesting that it's been mentioned that he's the sort that needs an arm around him. I mean, it frustrates me when a player can be, it's not like he's 17. He's 22. He's not that young. You'd think by that stage you could motivate yourself. You wouldn't need someone telling you you're brilliant all the time to actually go out and perform.
I mean, the only thing I would say about that is, like, clearly Russell Martin from the start didn't rate him, didn't like him. He gave him a couple of chances here and there, but even sort of to us in press conference and stuff, he would be quite happy to explain what Cameron Dean wasn't doing, which is totally fair enough if he's not doing the things expected of him. But maybe it just has been 18 months. He hasn't felt loved, hasn't felt rated, and maybe it has got on top of him. And you say he's 22. That is young. 22 is young.
Yeah, I guess so. But I mean, we were still calling Nathan Tella Starboy when he was 23. I just find it embarrassing, to be honest. But I mean, with I can understand why it didn't really work for Sulemana under Russell Martin, because he's obviously the sort of player who wants to play off the cuff. He wants to take people on, and he wants to try and do stuff. And that Russell Martin said to the wingers, "I want you to, keep possession of the football first and foremost." I mean, you've even seen last week Adam Armstrong. He dropped a shoulder, threw a dummy, and tried to beat someone on the halfway line, which he'd never done in any game under Russell Martin, because he just was obviously told not to do it. So yeah, maybe Sulemana can thrive just by being given that, don't worry if you lose it sort of thing. Don't be afraid to try stuff. I thought it was interesting the way that because we almost played the split striker thing again, which spectacularly didn't work at the start of the season. So Sulemana was pulling left, Dibbling was pulling right. But what I liked about it, the way they did it, is the fact that Tyler Dibbling scored 2 goals from right in the middle of the penalty area, 6 yards out. It shows that they've obviously been working on, if the play's down the other side, then you make sure you get in the middle, which is what we weren't doing in those first horrible games of the season, where someone would go down one wing and there'd be absolutely no one in the middle. So I can kind of see there was a few experiments in there, or a few instructions in there that were carried out, and it's I mean, I think we all know this season's gone, but we just want to see some sort of attacking impetus taken into some of these future games, so we might not have another 18 games of abject misery to dissect on this podcast. It would be nice that whoever the 2 players are that play up front, if they could form some sort of partnership, and hopefully yesterday was the first signs of that.
Steve, a man we've not seen a lot of is Cameron Archer. I like Cameron Archer. I thought he was one of our brighter sparks early on in the season. He's struggling to get in the side. What's your thoughts on that one, Steve?
I could only assume that he's maybe showing signs of sort of a lack of confidence or whatever in training. Because there's nothing that we've seen from anybody else in the squad as kind of a hard and fast justification for Archer not being in, or at least getting opportunities in that team. Like Adam Armstrong, we know what his level is at this level. We know that it's not quite there. Onuachu, okay, yeah, everybody's had a little bit of a laugh and a giggle. Not good enough. Yeah, okay, he might be the guy that can play a link role, but you've got to kind of use him as a better focal point and just be able to get players around him better, which we can't do. So Archer should be the guy who's important in this team, because we know that he plays well off the shoulder, especially against the high line. So I mean, a game like Thursday at Old Trafford, you would think United are going to be playing quite a pretty high line, even though Maguire's likely to be in their back 3. They'll rely on the speed of the other 2 to pick up the slack there, and actually that's kind of where Archer kind of comes into his own. I think when you're able to get balls down the channel for him to chase onto. But frankly, the last 2-3 months we've stopped giving him the ball. One thing we said at the start of the season when we first kind of saw him, especially Cardiff away, you could see he was just constantly making the same run, and trusting that eventually somebody in midfield will play the pass, and he scored 2 goals as a result of it. And we've got to get back to kind of trying to do that again. I think that's kind of reliant on players in the midfield areas who are a little bit more comfortable with what they're doing, happy to play that pass kind of first time if it needs to be. Also happy to hold your hands up and say, "Yep, sorry, didn't quite weight that right, or it got intercepted or whatever." I mean, Russell Martin used to be really a real big fan of sort of saying, "Oh, we were really brave on the ball." Bravery on the ball isn't just retaining possession. Bravery on the ball is having the confidence to play the pass, to play the kind of killer pass, even when there is a high risk of it not working. Because the reward from playing that pass, it's kind of similar to how the attitude that we had with possession in our defensive third is actually the attitude we should have had in the attacking third, where attacking players should have the freedom to give the ball away. Because if you give the ball away, but you're trying something that, if it comes off, will be brilliant and will lead to a clear chance for a teammate, absolutely, you shouldn't ever be getting hammered for that. Whereas it was kind of the opposite. We were giving defensive players a free pass for presenting the opposition with a free shot 15 yards from our goal. So I think we kind of got priorities slightly skewed at some point. I'm not quite sure when that balance kind of tipped. But yeah, I think that's where I think we're gonna kind of hopefully cause teams a few problems. But I mean, I would probably put Cameron Archer in as my first choice attacker, but
yeah,
I don't think even Juric sees it that way. So I can only conclude there's been some. I don't know whether he's just not been kind of on top form in training, which is surprising given that he gets to play against our defence every week.
Yeah, it's a surprising one because I think he's got so much to give, and maybe the confidence after the Liverpool game, he was pulled out the side not long after that. Maybe he just has lost some confidence. Somebody that's come back into the side, Alfie, Leslie Ugochukwu, he seems to be a really important linchpin in that midfield for Ivan Juric and the way he wants to play football. Need to keep hold of him, don't we? Do you think that that's going to happen?
Well, he was a really important linchpin in the midfield against Swansea. Yeah, he was one of the better players for sure. I mean, if you go back to the Brentford game, he was not that. He certainly wasn't. So he's still a bit of a mixed bag at the moment, isn't he? I think we've seen as many good performances now, I think, probably as we've seen bad. But we've seen a few bad ones. But what happens with him just comes down to Chelsea, doesn't it? Really, if they think that he's going to get the right game time here, then they'll let someone keep him. And Ivan Juric wants to keep him because he's got very limited options in that midfield. You know, I think you look at maybe Flynn Downs. Joe Reba, I thought, did okay yesterday, but started a bit slow. I mean, Will Swanman's now back.
His positioning was very interesting. Basically playing as a sort of fourth centre-back at times. It was really odd.
Yeah, there's probably he's gone from playing striker in the Europa League final to, like you say, sort of a half-back in the FA Cup third round. Interesting career move. Will Smallbone's back. He's he's really liked by Ivan Juric, actually. Even though you probably wouldn't look at him and think he's that sort of heavy metal football. I think he likes the way he understands the game and sees him, and he'll get a chance under Ivan. And to be fair to Will, I mean, I feel bad for him because he has played like 20 odd Premier League games now, but he's never really had a run. The last time he played more than 3 in a row was in 2020. And he hasn't been given a chance this season. So I want to see him first before we declare that he's not good enough at this level. But yeah, you wouldn't put him down as an Ivan Juric type player. And I think that's it, isn't it? It's those four really that are the main options. Obviously, Adam Lallana seems to only do 5-10 minutes at a time under Ivan. So yeah, I think you're not going to get a better player than Leslie Ugochukwu for nothing. So they might as well keep hold of him if they can. And it's just the other one that you want to send back, obviously Maxwell Cornet. So I think if they can get him and go on and get another loan, and then I'd keep Leslie. But you talk about the strikers, Cameron Archer and that. I mean, Ivan Juric spoke about sort of Tyler Diblin's positioning yesterday, and he said basically he's obviously only 18. He's not like physically developed, so he can't run that much. He can't do the pressing game that I want. And the one position on the pitch where I can sort of alleviate him of that is up front as a striker, where he can just sort of wait for his moment in the box, like Glen suggested, and just score the goals there with the talent he has. So I think Ivan sees him going forward, and probably Kamaldeen, as the striker pairing, just because it gets the best out of Tyler. It means he doesn't have to do all the running and stuff that he has to do either on the right or in the middle. So I think we'll probably see that against United as well.
Is there any news that Alfie on Flynn Downs and his injury at the moment? Is he nearing a return?
I don't know, to be honest. I mean, they've had a couple of games now where he's been like nearly back, and then he's not. And I think Ivan said during this one he definitely wasn't going to be back. So I'd imagine he's not close. So that's usually the kind of thing they say when there's a bit of a setback. So I don't know exactly, but I'm not expecting him to be back.
Glen, there was an attendance yesterday. It was particularly low, wasn't it? You were there. You were pitch side with our sponsor. 12,150. They were saying lowest since playing Northampton in the League Cup. What were your thoughts on the turnout yesterday?
Well, it's indicative of A, when the game was, B, as in just after Christmas, B, I think we've touched on the ridiculous ticket prices they put on the game. Our poor season so far, it's an extra game. Did people want to pay extra money to put themselves through that if they were season ticket holders? So I mean, Swansea's fans I thought were excellent. There was not many of them, but the ones that were there, put a lot in. So it wasn't a particularly attractive game for them either. And I think it all adds up to 12,000 people turning up, and it was live on telly as well, wasn't it? So it was an easy one to watch. And I mean, I'll be brutally honest. I mean, this was the first time in years that I was going to voluntarily miss a game, because I just for all of the reasons said above, mainly the cost of it just after Christmas, I wasn't going to go. And then we were very fortunate that Paul invited us along to watch the game, and it all got a bit bizarre, because the more eagle-eyed viewers of you will have noticed that there was some big lumbering idiot looking like a bodyguard on the pitch at the start of the game.
How did it all come about? How did it all come about?
Well, Steve bottled it. He was asked first, and there was someone good looking down there, and so they asked Steve first, and he bottled it. And and I bearing in mind that Paul had invited us to the game, and he asked me to do it, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'll do it if no one else will. And I didn't think anything of it, and then 10 minutes later we got the knock to go down. So Paul and myself were competing for who was the most unathletic thing to grace the pitch on yesterday afternoon. So it was all a bit weird, but all good fun.
But Glenn, it's what I said to you yesterday. I mean, that's the closest you've ever been to Camberdy and Sulemana, and an absolute treat. So there's something
obviously,
in there.
Obviously, well, get me on the pitch at Old Trafford, and we'll see if we can get a performance out of him. But no, it was a good day, very enjoyable, and thank you very much to our sponsor Paul for inviting us along.
It was good. I thought it was a good opportunity for the club to try and get more kids there. People that don't have that money to go and watch Premier League football, because it's expensive to watch Premier League football. Ipswich yesterday was half the price for an adult. They did it at a tenner. I think they did kids for a fiver. But it's just that opportunity. Maybe even if you did kids for a quid, or just try and get people that opportunity to go and watch live football. Because I took my daughters many years ago, and it once you're taken once, they can become a Saints fan for life. I just think it's a missed opportunity. That's my opinion. Magic of the FA Cup, Steve. I want to talk to you about the magic of the FA Cup. Do you feel that that's drifted away a little bit over the last few years? And it seems to be winding away more and more, doesn't it?
Yeah, this season is obviously particularly bad because we're now into the new era of no replays at any stage, which frankly is an absolute disgrace, and it's only been brought about so that Spurs and Newcastle can bugger off to Melbourne 3 days after the season has ended and play a pointless friendly that nobody gives a toss about. It's a shambles. And I mean, you only have to look at like Tamworth yesterday, held Spurs to goalless draw after 90 minutes. Ordinarily, that would have been money spinning replay for them back at White Hart Lane. And they'd have earned another probably 500-600 grand off the top of that. Whereas now any non-league side going up against a pro team in a 90-minute game that then spills into extra time. It's very, very rare that a non-league team will be able to last that extra 30 minutes. The natural fitness of professional athletes against semi-pro. that sort of thing, it doesn't even really matter what level it is. I think League Two side would have had the same advantage as Spurs did yesterday over a part-time team like Tamworth. And I mean, I've seen a report this morning that apparently the FA are considering scrapping extra time, which I mean I'm all in favour for anyway. I think extra time for the most part is a waste of time because everybody's knackered. You all you're doing is stringing out the game for an extra half an hour. More often than not, games aren't won in extra time. Other than these lopsided games against non-league sides. So yeah, I mean, getting rid of extra time, I've no particular issue with. I'd actually be in favour of that, but they have simultaneously said that they're not going to revisit the replay situation now. So I think we're basically done on that. Which I mean, the as I say, the only teams that benefits is the top 7, 8, 9 teams. And you look at the sort of sides that some of the other teams have put out. Like Brentford made, I think, 8 changes, got turned over at home by Plymouth, who I think they've got 3 points away all season. So yeah, good of Brentford to kind of turn into us for 90 minutes. But yeah, like a side like them should be looking at an FA Cup run as an opportunity, because we know that on their day Brentford are a match for anybody in the Premier League, but they don't see it that way. They clearly, I mean, Thomas Frank was obviously one of the sort of more vocal sort of opponents of replays anyway. And yet, what's the point in him even coming out and saying anything when you're going to toss off a game like that against the side that's bottom of the Championship? You might as well just not bother entering and keep your thoughts to yourself and let the rest of us play in the competition that we want to play in. Yeah, I mean, I think the sort of magic of the FA Cup sort of trademark probably vanished when Man United were sent to Brazil to play in that Club World Cup. Yeah. And obviously dipped out of playing in the FA Cup for a season. Wasn't their choice. The FA sent them because they thought that we could win the hosting rights for the World Cup, not realising that it had already been bought and paid for. And yeah, ever since then, it's the competition has been diminished in status, because once the FA, once the actual organiser of the competition stops taking it seriously, then everybody within that competition will kind of start to follow suit, unfortunately. And yeah, that's kind of where we are.
There's other stuff as well, isn't there? Little things like the draw for the next round happening halfway through the second half. That's ridiculous as well. No need for that. Yeah, whilst they're expanding the Champions League and and all that lot, that things were always going to get
too many games apparently.
Yeah, it's just absurd. I mean, it's always more in the bigger competitions, and the FA are quite happy to set fire to the traditions of the FA Cup, and that's the way it that's the way it seems to be, and that's the way it's going to be moving forward. It's not going to get any better, that's for sure. So the magic of the FA Cup is a bit of a joke, really, especially if you can remember back to what the FA Cup meant to everybody in the days before the Premier League, really. And it's just another competition that the bigger clubs certainly don't care enough to put out a decent team. And it's a struggle to get too excited for it these days, and that's where you get gates like we had yesterday. Because that fixture 20 years ago, if they priced it properly, would have probably had 27,000, 28,000 in it. But you don't see that sort of thing anymore.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Is there anything else we've missed on the Swansea game yesterday?
Just Amo-Ameyaw absence.
Yes, that's a good point.
I'm told he just needs to do more. Simple as that. I don't think there's anything sinister going on. I just think he needs to do more, which has sort of been the recurring verdict of Ameyaw.
Stick his hand up to play for the under-21s. I mean, literally just once.
Yeah. So I don't. I think the obvious thing is he obviously wants to leave, doesn't he? So obviously he probably wants to use this window to leave. But the best way to do that would be to showcase yourself, wouldn't it? But yeah, just told them, just has to do more.
I've just got one more thing. Just got one more thing on yesterday. It was Nathan. Even Uric has Nathan Jones. I nearly said that. Even Uric has used the games that he's had so far. If you look at our defenders, you've got Bednarek, Harwood-Bellis, Walker-Peters, who always play, and the other two positions are kind of up for grabs. He's now tried all of Wood, Taylor, Manning, Bree, Sugawara.
Well, Manning for me took the place yesterday. In my opinion.
Yeah, I think so too. I was going to say that. I thought he was excellent at left back. Gave us a balance. I'm really not sure about James Bree it's just not good enough. Just always looks lost to me. So I think there's still a question mark there as the third central defender. But I guess it's either going to be him or Nathan Wood. In the that's what I said, Nathan, because Nathan Wood was on my list. So it'll be him or Wood going forward against Manchester United. But it's interesting to me that he's tried all these players to, and it'd be interesting to see what he settles on for the next few games going forward. That's it.
Alfie, Ryan Fraser's another player that we've not seen anything of since Uric's come in, have we? Is he injured?
Yeah, I lost you there for a second, Martin. But Ryan Fraser, I don't know. I haven't heard or anything, seen anything. I don't know if he's fit. Don't know if he's just not being selected. So, one thing that was interesting that Ivan said, I can't remember if it was before the game or before. He said, "I've got sort of 17 or 18 players that are competitive," and I thought, okay, well that leaves out at least sort of 10 or 11 who aren't competitive. So I presume that he's one of those. That's the only assumption I can make.
Right, it is time for our TSP Player of the Week, gentlemen. Let's kick off with yourself, Glenn. Who's shone for you? Who's your Player of the Week?
I'm not going to say Sulemana. I'm going to let everyone else say it. I mean, I know. I'll go with that one. Kamaldeen Sulemana. You know, I love the second goal and his contribution in that, and Leslie Ogichukwu contribution in that. I thought it was excellent, and that's the kind of thing we've been expecting him to do for best part of 2 years ever since he arrived, was to, you know, a little give and go out on the wing and then play the ball in with a bit of quality into the right areas. And so the fact that he scored, I mean, it was a good finish for the goal. Goalkeeper made his mind up for him a little bit. I don't know what on earth the goalkeeper was doing, but you've still got to finish it, and it was a good finish. Set up the second goal, and he looked for the first time like he was actually enjoying his football in that first half. So just for turning a bit of a corner. Hopefully, we'll see where it goes. So I'll say Sulemana for yesterday.
Steve, how about yourself?
I guess I'll go with the other goal scorer, Tyler Dibbling. Actually didn't have a huge impact on the game, but was there at the crucial moments, which I think people kind of expect too much from someone of such young age and inexperience. But at the end of the day, if you are either contributing across a broad kind of period of the game, or you are impacting in little moments, I think realistically you're probably not going to have both very often. But if you can get one or the other out of him in each game, then you're guaranteed a certain level of quality. And we certainly had that in terms of the finishing yesterday. And I mean, obviously goals are the main currency. And I mean, him getting a couple. I think it's only him and Archer that have managed to get two in a game this season. So. Long may that continue.
Alfie, your Player of the Week.
Yeah, do you know, Steve, Dibbling actually had 17 touches in the entire game, and obviously 2 of them were to score.
Very Haaland-esque.
Very efficient, very efficient. I'll complete the quartet, I suppose, with Leslie Ugochukwu, who I've already mentioned, a non-goal scorer, and then it's a toss-up between Matty Fernandez and Ryan Manning. So, I mean, anybody wants to put as the fourth option.
No, I thought
Manning was good.
Really good.
Manning, cool. There you go.
I was really impressed with Matheus Fernandes. I'll throw Matheus Fernandes. I thought he was brilliant. Whenever I see him play, I think he's a brilliant player. Right, thank you, gentlemen. Right, we have 2 Premier League games coming up this week. It's quick turnaround in games as well. We have Man United away on Thursday. We're going to have a look at that very, very shortly. But before we do that, we're going to take a look at Nottingham Forest. We have a very special guest joining us on the podcast today. Matt Davis is joining us here on the Total Saints podcast. And we're going to have a look ahead to our opponents on Sunday. Matt, thank you very much for joining us. How are you?
Well, I'm very well. The season's, I don't want to rub it in your faces. The season's going very well, thank you. So I'm doing all right.
Talk about the season. I watched loads of your content on the Forest Focus. Absolutely love your work. Congratulations on what you're doing. The season's been unbelievable, hasn't it? You must be in dreamland.
Oh yeah, I mean, we did go into the season thinking that we would be, okay. We finished the previous season slightly better than the results in terms of performances, but I think we had a couple of good results to start with. Obviously, we won a close game at St Mary's, and then it kind of cascaded after Liverpool winning there. We got a draw at Brighton and a draw at Chelsea, and everything kind of snowballed with positive momentum, which I guess is the inverse of Southampton with kind of the negative momentum. We've just been on the right side of it this season, and now we're all dreaming of what can be in terms of European football, even the Champions League. And yeah, if we win against Liverpool as we record this tomorrow, then I suppose we might even start dreaming of the title. But it's all pretty mental, to be honest. So yeah, it's pretty crazy to even talk about it.
It's 2 back-to-back home games this week as well. You have Liverpool, like you say, before you play us at the weekend. You could potentially do a league double over them. Could be the first time since 1962-63, which would be incredible, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we won there. We've won at Old Trafford as well in the same season, which I think is the first time for 100 years or something mad. We've won 7 in a row in all competitions, not conceded in 5. It's all crazy. But we do have a good team, and we do have a manager who's set us up really well, really effectively. We know we'll get onto this, but we know exactly what we are, and it's given us a foundation to compete in the league in a slightly different way. A lot of the teams at the top play a similar style, and we're doing it slightly differently. And we've got the quality of players this season to try and do it with such a strong defence that it's coming off so far, and I think it will continue. Maybe not to this degree, but I think there's a belief that we can maintain something similar to this form for the rest of the season, hopefully.
Matt, how much sort of credit and respect do you think Nuno has regained, I suppose, from obviously Forest fans, but the Premier League in general? Because the Spurs was clearly difficult, but actually when you look at the jobs he's done elsewhere, I mean, he's never really done badly, and maybe a little bit overlooked by a lot of the league.
Yeah, I think we as Forest fans and probably football fans in general, certainly Forest fans when he arrived, we had misconceptions, or we focused on the wrong things. We focused on the duff spell at Spurs, where I think pretty much any manager would have struggled there. He was like the 10th choice for the job or something. Then he went to Saudi Arabia, which kind of suggests that he'd given up on the Premier League, but I don't think he had. The real Nuno seems much more to be the Wolves Nuno, and it probably has to be the right kind of club where you can play his style of football, and that makes it sound like it's bad football. It's not. It's really entertaining, but I think fans need to be patient with it, and Forest fans are, because obviously we've been in the doldrums for so long that we're just loving this. But I think he's a great manager. The more you hear about him in terms of his man management, his works with charity, and his work in the community, and it's obviously much easier to be focused on the community and do all that nice stuff when you're winning games. But we've seen that so much this season. I think he's one of the more underrated managers in the league, definitely, Alfie. Yeah.
I think Forest is one of those teams. I'm a little bit embarrassed about it because I think at the start of the season I probably would have tipped you to be, bottom 5 at least, or at most. And I think I even asked the guest we had on at the time, is just avoiding relegation sort of the aim? But I mean, you actually look at the team; they make football look simple in the sense that you've got a big number 9 who knows where the goal is. You've got a couple of really quick wingers, a player like Morgan Gibbs-White right behind them, and a defence, who's organised by Nuno, who's clearly well drilled, knows what they're doing. Oleana, Starring, and you actually just sort of think, it's one of those where how did anybody even think they'd be down there? But I suppose you don't know until they go on and surprise you.
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of individual players there who you think could play in top half teams comfortably, like Ilanga and Hudson-Odoi, but they were kind of reclamation projects where they could have gone the other way, and they haven't. I think it's all, when you say it like, it's all kind of simplified, and you think back to Brian Clough with, get the ball to John Robertson and he'll cross it in. And you don't really have teams like that anymore. It feels like it was massively overcomplicating things. You probably discussed this with Sam and Russ Martin massively, but there's some value in just having a big lump of a centre half alongside a ball playing centre half. A number 10 will create and two wingers will cross it for a striker who can score. And it sounds simplistic, but teams haven't worked out how to stop it, especially on the counter-attack with the damage that Morgan Gibbs-White's been doing recently. And Elanga, between them, I think they've got, Gibbs-White's got 6 goals or assists in 6 games, and Elanga's got 5, and Chris Wood's on fire, and it's all come together at the right time, certainly. Yeah.
Gosh, we can only dream of those numbers at the moment, and that's throughout the entire team.
It's just the way. What I'm impressed with is the way he has built a team to play to an obvious style of play, and the players that he brought. He's brought in round pegs for round holes, and that sounds so obvious, but so many managers don't do it. They sign the players they can sign rather than players they actually need. The last time I was as impressed with sort of like recruitment that was done by any team was years ago when Klopp was building Liverpool's team. When he bought the fullbacks that he needed to play the style that he'd want, and then he bought the centre half and the goalkeeper, and it all kind of fell into place. So the players that Forest have recruited relatively recently, like Elanga and Hudson-Odoi, and the centre half Milenkovic looks a great player as well. So to get those players in and to get them to play to the pattern that he wants them to play to is tremendous management and tremendous recruitment that we can only dream of. And to get like an Indian summer out of Chris Wood is because he was a player that was linked with us, I think, 2 years ago. Yeah,
in the January window, I'm sure.
The last time we were having a disaster, and to be honest, most fans were probably sort of like turning their nose up at that thought. And instead, we signed a 6'8" guy from Nigeria who's been pretty useless since we signed him. So, that's kind of the way it's been going for us. But it's nice to see, a team that's not traditionally, if you like, one of the big boys doing well.
Yeah, we did have a period of very rough recruitment as well, born out of the chaos of promotion, getting up through the playoffs, and we signed a ton of players, and the owners
nobody's talking about like 47 players in a season anymore, are they? Everything is all about how smartly Forest have recruited. And it's like, well, that was only 2 years ago that you were obviously spending all that money, breaking PSR, getting the points deduction, but ultimately it served you well because, frankly, the team that you came up with had no rights to get promoted, really. In terms of the individual quality, they were obviously a team that had built from, obviously Cooper had got them from bottom of the table to promotion at Wembley. But if you laid that 11 team first team out to most Championship fans, they said, well, that side should finish about 12th. So to have got them promoted and then obviously completely thrown it all away through necessity. Got all those players in and somehow got enough of them to kind of do the minimum that you needed to stay up that first season. Because it is ultimately, once you stay up 1 year, you're suddenly at a huge advantage. You get through the first year and it's everything gets a whole lot easier because you've then got the budgetary advantage. You've got the
3 promoted teams who are just as bad as you were.
Yeah, exactly. Three teams that are just coming up that are in the situation you were in the year previous.
So you're saying that we'll be all right next year?
What when we somehow finish 17th? Bearing in mind that tomorrow is apparently the day when the Premier League are gonna sort of be doling out any PSR penalties for this season. Are we kind of banking on? Are there 3 that are going to be below us? City, I think, is probably a given. But beyond that, Leicester maybe. But yeah, we've still got to find some actual points from somewhere.
We are clutching at straws. Yeah. Matt, there's one player who hasn't been mentioned at all. Obviously, he's on loan, 30-year-old midfielder, not getting much game time. But James Ward-Prowse, who, what's going on with him at the Forest?
He's been a little unlucky, I think. He came in, and I think his first game was at Anfield, and he played really well. He was a bit in and out of form after that for a couple of games because I don't think he played at West Ham. And then he got sent off at Chelsea when he was actually playing really well in the game. And I don't know if you recall, he fell on the ball and handled it.
It was a good second booking that.
Yeah,
they were clean through.
And unfortunately for him, since then, he's not been able to really get back in the team because Ryan Yates, Nico Dominguez, and Elliot Anderson in particular have played so well. Ward-Prowse did play against Luton in the Cup, and he did well, but he just finds himself down the pecking order. But I don't think it's anything he's done particularly wrong. I don't think he's played overly well, but he's not. No player this season's been absolutely howling. He's been fine, but he's just a little unfortunate, I think, to be honest.
Is there a danger that West Ham recall him because he's not getting enough games?
I guess it's down to the Potter, isn't it? Is he a Potter player? You guys have seen more of him than I have, to be honest. Has he?
Yeah, I reckon Potter would fancy him.
I could see it. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. But I guess it depends on what deal's been done because I mean they're punchy wages, aren't they? About 150 grand a week, I think.
Yeah, I think he's our top earner even now. So it depends if all parties agree. We are trying to. I think we've got the 12th or 14th highest budget in the league. I think we're linked with a couple of midfielders, Douglas Luiz and a few others. I've seen names bandied about. So maybe he goes back. He's probably our fifth choice central midfielder right now, I would say.
Yeah. Matt, your home form's been
he would
very
be Son's
good,
best
isn't
player
it?
by a mile. Yeah. Sorry, go on, man.
Say again.
Mate, your home form has been unbelievable this season. I was looking at recent games. You won 6 of the last 7 home games.
Yeah, we did start a little slowly. We played Bournemouth at home and were a little unfortunate. They played really well, and then drew a game we should have scored a screamer, and then we lost the France. We did start slowly. We got progressively better. We had a really good win against Aston Villa in stoppage time, and it's just part of all this momentum thing, I think, Martin, that we were losing that game with 5 minutes to go and won it. And as soon as we scored the equaliser through Milenkovic, they grabbed the ball and they were back to the centre spot and ready to go again. And there's a lack of fear of anyone, really. We'll see how it goes against Liverpool. Obviously, I don't think we will get hammered, but it's always possible with a team of their quality. But yeah, there's certainly belief that we can.
They've not been quite as sort of dominant in the last month, 6 weeks or so, have they? So I think I don't think they're anywhere near as kind of to be feared as they were, say, 2-3 months ago.
Yeah, I think their fullbacks are on the slide, aren't they? Well, Trent's on. It looks like he's on his way, and Robertson's on the slide. So our wingers will pose a threat to them tomorrow, hopefully.
Matt, where do you see you finishing up this season? Do you think you can keep this momentum going and finish in the top 4?
I do, and I think there's justification. I know people will maybe scoff at that, but if you look at our defensive statistics, we've conceded, I think it's as many goals as Liverpool, and we're built on such strong foundations. I don't know if you guys play stock in XG or not, but it's very strong. We look very hard to break down. We've only had a couple of games against real top teams where they've kind of picked us off, City and Arsenal, both away. But other than that, we look strong. And we always look like we'll score at least 1 goal. So I feel like we can get something from any game. So I think there's reasons to believe that we can do it. That's not saying we definitely will. The other thing is when you look at the teams that are up there, like Arsenal, it looks a bit rotten at the moment, a little bit, without Saka. Chelsea aren't playing quite as well recently. I think Newcastle are really strong and probably the team to fear. And City depends kind of what they do in January. If I watched the highlights against West Ham still could have scored a lot of goals in that game. So, I mean, you can always spin a narrative, can't you? So I'm spinning a narrative here that we can do it. It's obviously going to be very difficult, but I do believe it's possible. Yeah.
That'd be brilliant to see. It would be really good to see. Before we go, Matt, we've loved having you on the podcast. We're going to get a score prediction from everyone. I'm going to, as the guest, I'd like to ask you first. What's your score prediction for this one against Southampton? Obviously, you got Liverpool before that.
I think it depends more on you guys being Man United in a way. Having seen your performance against Brentford, which was
dreadful.
I mean, we were in our WhatsApp group saying.
I hope performance is in inverted commas.
We were in our WhatsApp group saying Southampton are going to break Derby's record after that because they look like they're gone. So if you guys go to United or what is it away? you guys
yeah.
do put in a performance there, then my prediction would be revised. I mean, I've got to come on and say I think we'll win because I do, because we've done well against you, and I think you've got good players. Like I think Fernandez looks good. I think Dibling's brilliant. I think there's lots of talent in your team. Kyle Walker-Peters is out of contract, and we were saying on our podcast the other day he's a good signing for someone, maybe us. And so it's just the collective thing doesn't look right. Whether the new manager can get a tune out of you, I don't know. But it feels like we're playing you so early in his tenure that I do think we'll win without thrashing you. 2-0, something like that. We don't concede many goals. So, I think Forest will have a comfortable win. Sorry.
No, you're backing your team like we would like to do. Alfie, what's your thoughts on this one?
No, I think for all the same reasons that Matt's outlined, I'm also going to go for a 2-0 Forest win, and it could be their 7th win in a row with a clean sheet, depending on what happens Thursday. So,
could be their 8th league win in a row. I don't know who it will be, but it could be.
Yeah.
Glenn, what's your thoughts?
I think it's in our interest to make it a real sort of turgid game as best we can, and don't leave any space in behind by overcommitting players forward. So I just have a feeling that Uric will set us up that way to play deep. So I think it could be a frustrating game for Forest if we get to half time, still level. Then maybe some nerves and a bit of we've played a couple of teams this season where there's obviously they all expect to beat us, and against Brighton and for example they started sort of like getting a bit niggly as it got into the second half and they weren't all having it their own way. Fulham was another one that was like that as well. So I'm hoping that we can make a game of it, but ultimately I think we'll come up short, and I'll go for 1-0 to Forest. What
about you, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way we'll set up will be very defensive, which, I mean, Forest love nothing better than sort of non-elite teams coming at them, and then they can just pick them off on the break because they've got better players in those areas. So I think we will basically do everything in our power to not do that. I don't think we'll be showing an awful lot of attacking intent, quite frankly. I think we will. It's going to be one of those mad games where I think both teams are going to be desperate for the other team to have the ball, so that they can try and win the ball back in a good area and be really efficient with how they use the ball on the counter attack. I mean, Forest obviously over the last year, 18 months or so, have shown themselves to be very good at doing that. We have been kind of somewhat less so, because basically over that time we've been used to dominating possession. So trying to get used to a different style and different way of winning Premier League points is understandably taking its time. But I think I think it's going to be much more like the Fulham game just before Christmas, where we frustrated the hell out of them, didn't really create a huge amount, but had little minor openings and then got away with it a little bit with the 2 chances they created towards the end. But quite frankly, Forest are better than Fulham, so I would expect them to take at least one of those chances, and it will be Chris Wood because he always scores against us. Also going to go 1-0 to Forest.
Yeah, I think Forest will win it as well. Love to be positive, but it's hard to be. I think Forest are a really good side. Matt, from what I was saying, I'm going to go with a Forest victory. I'm going to go 2-0 Forest. I don't see us scoring. I think you'll be solid, and I wish you all the best for the rest of the season. Matt, thank you for coming on our podcast this evening. It's been brilliant to have you with us.
Yeah, cheers, Matt.
We'll see you soon.
I'll see you on Friday, Martin. Yeah, thank you very much for doing our podcast. So appreciate it. Thanks, fellas.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Cheers.
That was Matt Davis from the Forest Focus podcast. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm looking forward to that as an away day. I've never been to Forest as an away day, so really looking forward to the visit there at the weekend. Right, before we go to Forest, we have Man United away on a Thursday night, Glen. Whenever do we have Premier League football on a Thursday night other than Christmas?
I'll give up with it. I just totally give up with the scheduling of games these days and the kickoff times and all that rubbish. But yeah, Thursday night in Manchester. Well, that'll be lovely, won't it? Yeah, I mean, up until United have had a couple of decent results recently. Obviously, knocked Arsenal out of the FA Cup, but they equally, from what I've seen, could have lost that game quite comprehensively.
Oh, they got battered, absolutely battered.
If Arsenal had taken their chances and Kai Havertz was a footballer, they could have lost that game quite comfortably. They put in a decent performance against Liverpool the previous week. So the criticism of them is that they can do it when they want to. Obviously, they won that game at Manchester City a few weeks ago. They can kind of do it when they want to and get the results. And it's been a thing with United for a while that it always seems to be more down to individual players. Coming up with the goods. They never seem to play that well in any of these games. But I mean, the goal they got against Arsenal was, I can't stand Bruno Fernandes, but that was a fantastic finish that he put in for that goal. And so again, it's another game where they will be seeing it as a big chance to make a statement against one of the lesser lights of the division, and that's us, of course. So they will be looking to win this game comfortably. There will be an expectation from their supporters and all the tourists to win this game comfortably. So we have to go there and make it difficult for them. He seems to be Amorim seems to be sort of like he seems to have settled with a team now. So you would think that they would only get better from here on in. So he's had experiments using the likes of Casemiro and Eriksen in midfield, and now he seems to have settled on Kobbie Mainoo and Ugarte, or whatever his name is, the new midfielder they've got.
Yeah, I do find it baffling that you can kind of go from the first pairing to the second pairing and sort of still have a conscious of why you even put those first two together at any stage, let alone against anybody good.
Yeah, it's not too dissimilar to what we're doing. I mean, they play the same formation as us, basically. It's sort of 3-4-3. And those, as we know, those two central midfield players are absolutely pivotal to how the whole thing works. So, they picked up a few. Diego Dalot got sent off, didn't he, yesterday? So I don't think he'll be available. Assuming, FA Cup sending offs count in the league as well. I think they do.
Straight
it was a 2 yellow job.
Oh, well, that still counts, rather than the accumulation.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
But also, I don't know if there's going to be any comeback because there was a big sort of 22-player sort of handbag session in that game as well. And there was some very dubious behaviour by Martinez and Ugarte. So it'd be interesting to see whether they... whether there's any sort of
getting involved in on-pitch brawls, surely some
unbelievable, isn't it? Unbelievable, but it'll be interesting to see if there's anything that comes of that in terms of extra bans and whatnot. Because there was no VAR at that game, which is probably why they got away with it. So, So all in all, we've got to go there and have a go at the end of the day. Keep it tight, but keep a threat at the top end of the pitch, and that's what it's an opportunity for Mr. Sulemana to do it in a league game at a big ground. And good luck to him. I think our team is taking shape now. Flynn Downs obviously isn't going to be back, so it's going to be Joe Aribo and Leslie Ukachukwu in the middle of the team. And
if Flynn is back, do you think he comes straight in for Joe?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
I think so.
Joe Aribo looked decent yesterday, but it's levels of opposition, isn't it? He's struggled every game he's played in the centre of midfield in the Premier League, really. So certainly in the last few weeks. So I would think Downs.
Sorry, go on, Glenn.
No, that's okay. No, I would think Downs would come back in if he's fit. I think Ryan Manning will start, and it's just the case of who that third centre back is for me. But
will be interesting to see. Steve, we haven't won there since 2016. Am I right in saying?
Sounds about right. Was that the Charlie Austin one?
Charlie Austin, it was the last time we won there. It was a long time ago, isn't it? Long time ago. Do you think there's an opportunity to try and build on that FA Cup win from the weekend? Do you think that will give us a little bit of momentum going into it? Or
it should do, but I do think that the way that the cup games are treated, I do think there is a natural kind of compartmentalization now where mentally players don't really kind of take cup and league form as kind of one thing. They're built up very differently. Obviously, the team rotates heavily for the cup games. So when you see the team sheet, when you see that 11 written up on the board, presumably like a day or two beforehand, where they're sort of training in formation and working on specific things for that game, you know who's in the 11 more or less. And I think when you see 5 or 6 changes, there is just that natural tendency to not quite take it quite so seriously.
Because obviously Saints didn't do that, Steve. They only made 2 changes. I think both of those might actually end up staying in the team as well. So do you think that with that, maybe it doesn't give them any forward momentum because things are so bad, but does it at least stop the backwards roll that they were on from Brentford? The fact is it will be the same team, I think, on Thursday.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, proof of the pudding being the eating, of course, but I mean, we've seen this group of players mentally disintegrate under the slightest bit of pressure before. So I'm not gonna stand here and say, oh, they've turned a corner by smashing Swansea again. But it's I mean, it'll be interesting to see which of the players can carry a good performance forward. I mean, Glen mentioned earlier about players not being able to string sort of 2 or 3 performances together. I mean, this is your kind of shop window for that sort of thing, isn't it? You go to Old Trafford, but it's not as tough a place to go as it used to be. That's for sure. But when you're a club with 2 points away from home all season, every away game's tough. So yeah, we go there with nothing to lose other than respect again. But it's I think there's a case for people sticking their hand up and saying, yeah, I actually fancy more of these sort of occasions. So let's see what we can scramble together between now and May. But I think realistically we're probably not expecting much. But you know that if United, I mean, you know that United are more than capable of throwing in an absolute stinker. And if they do, you've got to be on the sort of on the lookout and ready to take advantage. But yeah, we'll see.
Score prediction, Steve. What's your thoughts?
Oh Christ! Could be anything. I mean, United haven't really been creating that much lately. But they've obviously done enough to win games because, I mean, as we've mentioned before, when we play these sort of seemingly out of form or crisis club top 6 sides, is that they've got the individual quality who can just turn it on at the drop of a hat. Like, I mean, we discussed Bruno Fernandes has largely been a bit shit this season, quite frankly, but you know that he can do what he did yesterday. You know he's got the ability, and the problem is that, I mean, you kind of hope that him doing that yesterday doesn't suddenly spark a run of him sort of putting in player of the month worthy performances. But yeah, you never quite know what you're going to get from them. But you would think they're probably going to be slightly just about too strong, even if they put in a kind of mediocre performance. We'd have to be kind of firing on all cylinders to get something. So I think it's going to be another fruitless trip, I think, and probably also scoreless. 2-0.
Going 2-0. Glenn, what about yourself?
I fancy us in this game for some reason. It's not.
Yeah, here we go.
No, it's not. It's not some sort of alcohol poisoning from yesterday. I didn't drink that much. I fancy Ruben Interim. I was going to call him. I hope he. I hope he doesn't have a great day. So I'm going to go for us actually producing something and winning 2-1.
Wow,
there you go.
2-1 win. I like it. I'm going to back you with that. I'm going to go with a 2-1 victory as well.
Oh, no, don't
Alfie,
copy me.
I'm going to copy you. Yeah.
Well, look, I mean, Man United had their worst month on record. They lost 6 games last month, which for a club the size of Man United is actually incredible. But they've got a lot of practice of playing on Thursday nights now for the last sort of 10 years. And the Harry Maguire revolution is back. He is currently a key player for them again, and I'm all for that. that being said, yeah, I think Man United will be comfortable winners, and we'll go for a 3-1 win. But interesting, you mentioned Bruno Fernandes, and Glenn, you mentioned earlier about them sort of turning up when they want to. Bruno actually said after that Liverpool game, I wasn't worried about us performing against Liverpool. I'm going to be more worried about the Southampton game, which I thought was a nice little mention. But I bet he isn't, truthfully. Let's be honest.
Yeah, he doesn't strike me as a guy who tells the truth very often.
Anyway,
we are coming to the back end of the podcast, but before we go, I want to chat about a few bits. January transfer window's open, and I wanted to touch upon Gavin Bazunu making his return. Alfie, you were there on Friday night. Gavin makes his return after a lengthy injury against Fulham under-21s. Also, Don Ballard, he featured in that game along with Wellington. Give us your thoughts.
Yeah, good night actually. Friday night at Snow Stadium, obviously the home of AFC Tottenham. We'll keep it brief, but like I say, Gavin Bazunu played 90 minutes, made one save. It was a good save, and it's just good to see him back because although we had obviously a difficult really couple of seasons playing as the number one goalie, the expectation's not on him to be that anymore. You've got Aaron Ramsdale to at least end the season. Hopefully, I'm pretty sure they will. So for him, it's just about getting fit again. It was good to see him back out there after sort of 8 months, losing him in April for an Achilles injury. He had his surgery actually 24 hours after the injury. I think there was a case of where the surgeon was going to be going on a break for like a couple of weeks. So it was either you do it now or I can't do it. And they wanted this surgeon. So they got him in, within 24 hours. And he's made an unbelievable comeback. You mentioned Don Ballard's hat trick. Didn't quite work out for him at Blackpool. They had a management change about a week into his loan there, which is obviously never ideal for a young player because you get picked somewhere for a reason, right? And clearly that manager was going to play him in a certain way. Steve Bruce liked him, brought him in, but played him on the left wing and things like that. And, 1 goal, 18 games later, he's back at Southampton looking for another loan move. But that's 3 hat-tricks in the last 4 under-21s games for him now. So he's clearly too good for 21s. He needs to go out and play some games. And then next season, maybe he'll be an option for Southampton if he can just get a little bit bigger and sort of learn how to use his body a bit more. But there's also 2 signings. You mentioned Wellington, played 45 minutes. So maybe an indication of where Wellington is fitness-wise. If he's doing 45 minutes for the 21s, he's clearly not quite ready, as I sort of mentioned on the pod previously. But he looked all right. He was getting stuck in. There was no sort of what's the word, like kind of like attitude or sort of content, I guess. He didn't mind playing the 21s. He got right into the game, enjoyed it, was talking to the players in the limited English he has. And obviously 18-year-old Kay Sander played as well, made his first start for the 21s, joining from where did he join from? Valenciennes last week, and he looked okay, did his job. There's people talking in Turkey about him going to Göztepe on loan. As far as I'm aware, that's not true. That's not happening. He's playing for the 21s this season, training with the first team when possible. So yeah, it was actually a good night at the 21s. I enjoyed that, and I recommend anybody who's about on a Friday evening near Tottenham to go down and watch.
That sounds good. Glenn, there's a bit of talk today that Kyle Walker-Peters could potentially be offered a new contract. They want him to stay. Do you think that one will happen, or do you think he will move on, Kyle Walker-Peters?
I'd be amazed if he signed a deal now. He could potentially sign one at the end of the season if he doesn't think he's got any sort of better options. But I can't see him. I mean, I can see the club maybe trying. But I don't. I think if he was going to accept it's like Shea Adams last season. I mean, that he had a contract on the table for the whole of the season, and once you've waited to the last 3 months of your contract, I don't see why you'd lose your nerve and sign a new deal now, especially as you're likely to be in the Championship next season. And remember, Kyle played for England last year, was it? Or the year before? It was
2
couple of years now, 2022, wasn't it?
So, and he's obviously gone down the. He's obviously gone down the pecking order whilst we've been in the Championship and whilst we've been rubbish. So he's got to he'll be thinking that he can get to a much higher level and be knocking on the England door again. And to be honest, with us being in the Championship next year, virtually certainly, I honestly would be absolutely amazed if he signed a contract this year. Signed a contract now. I think he'll wait and see what comes in the summer. And as Matt said, he'd be a good squad option at the very least for a number of teams in the Premier League. But
I'd love to be surprised, but I can't see any world in which he doesn't have a better option on the table. Like no offense, I just can't see that. So
no, and he's at an age. What is he now? 27, 28.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's probably got sort of 5 more peak years left as an attacking fullback. And it's the same thing we said when James Ward-Prowse left. Ironically, he had 4 or 5 years left as a top level player. How many, do you want to spend 20% of that at least in the Championship? When you're on the fringes of the England squad, as Ward-Prowse was at the time, and as Walker-Peters was not so long ago. So no, I honestly can't see it.
Yeah, I think he's shown a lot of loyalty. He stuck with us in a tough time last year. Steve, final bit from me. I was just going to mention a bit of talk about Ryan Manning today. Links with Burnley. Someone we need to keep hold of. I feel. Do you feel the same?
It's quite amusing that we would have this conversation now, because I mean, if you think the fan opinion of him last season. And yet, actually, he's been one of the players who I think I've probably said this on other pods this season, that he's been one of the players that I think probably nobody expected him to play a single minute in the Premier League, and yet when he has played, he's actually looked one of our better players. I think ultimately it's come down to him being kind of tasked in a role where the duties are kept very simple. Don't complicate anything. He's given a lot of support out on that flank, because he's often played as a kind of left wing back with a left back kind of as the extra centre back, which has helped him. It's given him enough support defensively, so we've not left him exposed. The only time we did leave him exposed was, of course, that collapse against Leicester, where it all went horribly wrong when we decided that Ryan Fraser was the guy to help him out, and that went well.
Really weird for me that he didn't play in those early cup games. He was really out of the squad. He was not even involved at all at the start of the season. And now you look back at it, that is bizarre, isn't it? Just being obviously one of Russell Martin's long known players, one of his signings. Just the fact that he didn't even get on in the Cup of Cardiff and play. People like Jeremiah Whitmarsh did. It's just weird. Yeah,
I mean, I don't see any way in which he leaves unless someone comes in with a really silly bid. Which why would they? I mean, if you're talking about, someone like Burnley, okay, yeah, sure, he might be good enough for them for their promotion chase for the next 4 months, but he's not one that you're going to kind of hang your hat on as a left back as a guaranteed starter in a Premier League side. I mean, sure, as I say, he's exceeded expectations when he has played this season for us, but I don't think I would imagine that any club that's getting promoted is probably looking at somebody better than him, quite frankly. So yeah, I'd be absolutely amazed if we sold him. But then PSR regulations, get a little bit of money, free up a squad place. Maybe if someone does come in with some money, I don't know. If Burnley threw 5 million at us, I'm sure I'd absolutely bite their arm off.
And I think it'd be a shame because he's the best left back they got.
Yeah, but that's the sort of money you're probably talking about for a player who is. I mean, he'd be a squad player for a low team in the top flight next season, as he has been with us. And yeah, I just don't see anybody paying that sort of money, really.
No, I agree. It's been a bumper podcast. Guys, thank you so much. Thank you for everybody for tuning in and listening. Hope you've enjoyed it as much as I've enjoyed it. It's been brilliant. You can follow the Total Saints podcast on all social media platforms at Total Saints Pod. Check out the TSP merch store. It's shop.totalsaints.co.uk. As I mentioned earlier in the podcast, we're also on Patreon, where you can support the podcast with a monthly contribution. Just visit patreon.com/Total Saints Podcast. Each of our tiers comes with its own perks, including weekly shout-outs for those patrons in our Francis Benali or Mick Shannon tiers. So thank you goes out to Dave Milton, Andy Hollis, Anthony Thompson, Gavin Ford, James Harron, Nicky Nicholson, Southampton NY, Drew Dyer, and James Kibbe in our Francis Benali tier, and also to Colt Baker, Dave Ansberger, Ed Busy, Nick Hingston, Phil Cook, Nick Reed, Paul Stewart, Phil Horstrop, Matt Hall, Mark Littlewood, Mike Etheridge, James Bobin, John Bevan, and Liam Dempsey in our Mick Shannon tier. Hopefully I've got everybody's name correct. Thank you very much for joining us. And a massive shout out to Paul Castle Associates and Steamtown Brewery for sponsoring TSP this season. My thanks go out to Steve, Glen and Alfie. Thank you for watching and for listening, and we'll see you again next time.